As the only native English speaker, my day was mostly spent polishing up the writing of those who translated Chinese texts into English and working on the spoken English skills of those who did the broadcasts. I can't exaggerate how excited I was about making my humble contribution to the collective effort. I felt 100% connected to everyone around me and to the cause. It is a remarkable feeling, this connection thing you might write about someday, Terry. I had wanted to join the Chinese Communist Party from my days in Kalgan, and now I reopened the topic in Yan'an. It was a good while before a top official called me to a meeting to discuss the matter. He told me there would be an exhaustive background check and that I would need the direct approval of all 5 members of the Secretariat of the Central Committee, including Mao and Zhou. Eventually, they all agreed, and I became the one and only American admitted into the party. But as connected as I was to those around me, deep down in some ways I was still a disconnected individual in the Western sense. I'm not sure you can get that out of you once you're an adult, any more than you can start believing in magic if you've grown up in a world of science. And it wasn't long before this contradiction came bubbling up to the surface. What brought it up were bombs. Big, frightening, powerful bombs dropped by the KMT's B-29 bombers and aimed right at us. You see, during this period, Mao's forces were being overrun, and KMT troops had broken through the lines in several sectors. Even the caves of Yan'an were no longer safe, and we spent weeks and weeks retreating through the mountains in an effort to escape the bombardments. So it was fear that brought the Western man out in me, fear that brought the I principle to the fore. On one level, my fears were reasonable. These were very real bombs, and they made enormously loud explosions. Everybody was afraid. But the disconnected man in me reacted so differently from my Chinese compatriots. Something about the character of their connection to one another, about the depth of their cohesion to their collectivity, allowed them to react so differently to the fear they felt. I never saw a single Chinese comrade, man, woman, or even child, run from the trail. Not one. They just kept in line, trekking along the path. But not me. I just couldn't get myself to remain in formation when the explosions began. Something Western in me made me run off by myself in a desperate effort to find a rock outcropping or a thick grove of trees for protection. And this was from deep, deep inside me. I wanted with all my heart to be like the others, but I couldn't stop myself from doing this. And trust me, I tried with all my heart and soul to stop, because everyone noticed, and what I was doing was aberrant and highly embarrassing. But I simply couldn't stop myself. So why am I telling you all these details? Because if I'm not mistaken, they really shine a big bright light on the issue of connection you asked me to highlight. Here is what I think my inability to stay on the path reveals. Chinese and Western worldviews are radically and fundamentally different on the individual collectivity issue. I think I'd go so far as to say that the difference is so vast that the perennial Western inquiry about the dynamic between the individual and the collectivity doesn't even arise as a question in the East. I mean it. I've spent a lot of time in Chinese culture, and I've never once heard this issue discussed, let alone debated. In other words, I think philosophizing about the interplay between the individual and society is a purely Western inquiry. In the East, the connection with others and the immersion in the collectivity is so basic to social life and such an integral part of the worldview, and the emphasis on individualism is so limited that your inquiry might never even arise. This is very important for you to realize, Terry, because while I don't doubt you will someday get around to writing your book, and while I understand the issue of the individual and the collectivity is not precisely the same inquiry as your interest in loneliness and connection, it may be close enough for me to warn you about something. Sales of your book in Asia might be terribly modest, or even worse.